in Nigeria if they can create that level playing field that we have to very much ask for and maybe do.
Hello, great people. The U.S. government and President Donald Trump has issued stern warning to President Bola Tinubu and Nigerian government as regards the suspected imposition of Sharia in the southwest and other areas of Nigeria, and also as regards the activities of religious fundamentalists, particularly the persecution of Christians, the killing of Christians, and the activities of murderous herdsmen in Nigeria. Nigerian government and President Bola Tinubu has received 3 direct and indirect warnings from the U.S. government. We'll be looking at the details of this warning so that when you hear tomorrow suddenly that the U.S. government sanction Nigeria or they take action against the Nigerian government, you will know where the U.S. is coming from. So I will be sharing the 3 instances of the direct and indirect warnings that the Nigerian government and President Bola Tinubu has received from the U.S. with you. The first one is that of the speech of the man that you are seeing on your screen right now, the Vice President of the United States, Vance. His speech at the 2025 National Catholic Prayer Breakfast, where he specifically mentioned Nigeria as regards the persecution of Christians, and he stated the position of the United States to this particular issue. That is the first warning. Now, the second one is as regards the killing of Reverend Father Sylvester Okechukwu in Kaduna State. I will read to you the statement that was issued by the U.S. government, and I'll leave you to make meaning out of it. Now, the third case that we will be looking at is the death sentence that was handed down to Sunday Jackson, a student in his early 30s, for the killing of Buba Bawuru in Adamawa State. Sunday Jackson killed Buba Bawuru while trying to defend himself. Sunday Jackson is a farmer. Buba Bawuru is an herdsman. I will be taking you through what happened, the position of the United States, the implication of this for Nigeria. We'll be looking at all these issues on this episode of Politin. First, let us watch the video of the U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, what he said, how he mentioned Nigeria, and in what context. Then we'll come back for some great discussion. Let's watch it.
More than any president of my lifetime, President Trump has pursued a path of peace. And we very often, I think, ignore the way in which our foreign policy is either an instrument or an impediment to people all over the world being able to practice their faith. And we know, and as of course I learned in this breakfast last year, I believe there were some Nigerian priests who were being persecuted and were trying to protect their flock despite incredible persecution. We know that some of the biggest groups that are persecuted all over the world today are Christians. And the Trump administration promises you that whether it's here at home with our own citizens or all over the world, we will be the biggest defenders of religious liberty and the rights of conscience.
There you have it. You just heard from the U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, and you heard him mentioning specifically Nigeria as regards the persecution of Christians. Now, we can take this as the policy statement of the United States because he even referenced the U.S. President Donald Trump. And if you doubt it further, go and research the action of U.S. government as regards protecting Christians and go acting against religious fundamentalists across the world. Then you make meaning out of it. Then you would know that the U.S. government won't take it lightly with President Bola Tinubu and the Nigerian government as regards the persecution of Christians. Now, the second instance is what you can see on your screen right now as regards the killing of Reverend Father Sylvester Okechukwu in Kaduna State. And what you are seeing right now was posted by the U.S. mission in Nigeria. And you can see the social media handle, which you can verify yourself. And they issued a statement, and the synopsis of the statement is what I'm about to read for you as shown on the screen. It says, the U.S. mission is distressed by the brutal and senseless killing of Reverend Father Sylvester Okechukwu in Kaduna State, Nigeria. We strongly condemn this horrific act of violence. We extend our deepest condolences to the family, congregation, and community of Father Okechukwu who have suffered an immeasurable loss. Our thoughts are with them. During this time of profound grief, we call on the authorities to bring the perpetrators to justice. Again, I read the last statement. We call on the authorities to bring the perpetrators to justice. That means that we can say that the U.S. government is casting doubt on the ability or the willingness or the capacity of the Nigerian government will bring the perpetrators of the killing of the Reverend Father to justice. Now, this links me to the one of Sunday Jackson. There are different cases, but we can connect both of them. Now, Sunday Jackson, which is the third case, was sentenced to death recently by the Supreme Court. And I would leave you to get what really happened. The synopsis was accurately presented by Arise anchor Charles Anyongolu. He gave a perfect summary of what led to the death sentence that was handed down to Sunday Jackson for the killing of Buba Bawuru. Let me leave you to hear from Charles Anyongolu of Arise News. Then after that, we will now be hearing the statement of Dr. William Perens as regards the sentence that was handed down to him, and will make sense out of it as regards the relationship between Nigeria and the United States. Let us listen to the summary of what transpired, of what led to the death sentence handed down to Sunday Jackson as presented by Charles Anyongolu of Arise News. Let's watch it.
Sunday Jackson, a former student in his early 30s, is facing death by hanging after Nigeria's Supreme Court today upheld the judgment of a lower court in Adamawa State. Mr. Jackson was a student turned farmer who says he was violently attacked on his farm in Kodomti Forest in the Newman local government area in Adamawa State by a Fulani herdsman known as Buba Bawuro. The herdsman had strayed into Mr. Jackson's farm with his animals, and after Mr. Jackson challenged him, he apparently pulled a knife and a fight ensued. He stabbed Mr. Jackson a couple of times, but he managed to retrieve the knife and to stab his attacker in the neck, whereupon he died. Mr. Jackson was arrested and charged with murder. He's consistently argued that it was self-defense. In 2021, he was found guilty by a court in Yola and condemned to death by hanging. And today, the Supreme Court in Abuja upheld that judgment. So he's now in a race for his life, and the only option left is to appeal for clemency from the governor of Adamawa State. So
there you have it. You just heard a brilliant summary of what transpired from Charles Anyongolu of Arise News. Now, we would listen on that particular show. He had two guests, a black man that is living in the United States, a man of Nigerian origin and ancestry, and a white man. Now, let us listen to the submission of that white man. Then we make sense out of it. Then we come back and connect it to the killing of the Reverend Father. Let us watch the submission of the white man on Arise News. Then we come back for some discussion. Let's watch it.
This is a sad day, Charles, for human rights in Nigeria. Sunday Jackson, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm a human rights advocate. Sunday Jackson, by anyone's estimation, is totally innocent. And the issue where this man was out farming, minding his own business, and then the attacker came and a struggle ensued. And of course, this man is going to defend himself. That's why we call it self-defense. And yet today we were at the Nigerian Supreme Court, and it was very brief. It was only about maybe 2 minutes long. And we just wept at the failure of the Nigerian Supreme Court to say that this man, and they had the opportunity to say this man was totally innocent. We haven't seen all the ins and outs of the decision, but we had the opportunity to meet this humble farmer, this young man who unfortunately his wife abandoned him, had been on death row for 10 years. So Sunday Jackson has now become an international case for human rights.
Yes,
and
because
so we're going to continue to advocate.
I was going to ask you what are the international dimensions of this case?
Well, the international dimensions are Open Doors, which is a human rights organization, has recounted that there have been thousands of killings of Christians by Fulanis. And so as a human rights advocate and as a pastor, I'm here to advocate for this man who is totally innocent. So it has international implications. The eyes of human rights advocates are now on Nigeria. Like, how could this happen? How could this possibly happen? By anyone's estimation, as Barrister said earlier, manslaughter at least, because murder one that he's being convicted of and may face hanging if we can't get clemency for him, it has to be premeditated. So what justice on the Nigerian Supreme Court that didn't pop up and say to him or her, this is a case of self-defense and this man is totally innocent. So we encourage people to continue to pray for Sunday Jackson and his innocence.
There you have it. You just heard from Dr. William as regards the death sentence handed down to Sunday Jackson for the killing of Buba Bawuru. Now, this is where the U.S. government is displeased. Now, let me connect it to that of the killing of Reverend Father Sylvester Okechukwu in Kaduna State. Now, those that killed Reverend Father Sylvester Okechukwu are apparently religious fundamentalists. They are not being brought to book. Nothing is apparently being done to make sure that the perpetrators are being brought to justice. But then, when Sunday Jackson, who, according to U.S. government, is apparently a Christian by his name, Sunday Jackson, killed Buba Bawuru, then the Nigerian government apprehended him, took him to court, and all the way to the Supreme Court, they have affirmed a death sentence on him, despite the fact that Sunday Jackson was trying to defend himself. According to the testimony of Sunday Jackson, he is a farmer. He was on his farm, and Buba Bawuru was one of these herdsmen, and he attacked him with a knife while trying to use his crops to feed his cattle. And in the process of that, Sunday Jackson was able to overpower him. Then the knife, he used it to stab him. So at the end of the day, Buba Bawuru, the herdsman, died, and Nigerian government has followed the case up the way to Supreme Court, and death has been handed over to Sunday Jackson, despite the fact that he was trying to defend himself. Now, the U.S. government find the reaction of Nigerian government a bit contrasting. They find some inconsistency of character and policy in the attitude of Nigerian government, and this is why the U.S. government of Donald Trump is not taking it easy with the Nigerian government, particularly the Muslim ticket. I think that is an issue for the U.S. government. Perhaps if the vice president is a Christian or the president is a Christian, maybe the U.S. government may not have a strong position against Nigerian government. But then let us look at something. What can the U.S. government do? The U.S. government can do a whole lot. You will recall that recently in South Africa, the U.S. government sanctioned the South African government for the alleged reallocation of lands. The South African government was trying to take over lands from the white and, reallocate the lands to the people that ancestrally owned the land. You will recall that during apartheid, some white people took mass acres of land to themselves, and now the South African government is trying to rewrite the wrong. But the U.S. government got wind of it, and they decided to take action to sanction South Africa, to cut ties and aids and any benefit with the South African government, so much so that the U.S. government decided to give the white in South Africa and kind of like an express pathway to citizenship. That is how far the U.S. government have gone. And you find it a bit contrasting. The U.S. government that is, deporting people is now, because it now favors the white people, and that's why I usually say that Trump is a white supremacist. It is the same U.S. government that is now, giving the white in South Africa an express pathway to citizenship in the United States. That shows you the extent that the U.S. government can go against Nigeria. So what I can say is, to avoid sanction from the U.S. government, the Nigerian government of Bola Tinubu needs to be very, very careful so that they don't attract the wrath of the U.S. government, particularly if President Bola Tinubu has some things, have some things hiding in the U.S. because President Donald Trump may eventually say that they should go and release his records. He has released even confidential records in the United States. So I will urge the Nigerian government to be very careful and to make sure that justice is served to all and sundry. It's been an interesting time with you on this episode of Politinge. Do want to subscribe, turn on your notification button, catch up with my past videos, and of course I have great interesting videos coming your way. Till I see you again, always remember that I love you all sincerely.